Hugh Jackman had portrayed the character of Wolverine for over 17 years. In that time, he had become the head and most recognisable figure from the X-Men franchise. So when it was confirmed that the third Wolverine film would be his final outing, everyone was hoping that it would live up to the hype. And it's fair to say that Logan definitely lived up to that hype. I'm Tommy Bow from Movie Rewind, and without further ado, let's get into it. Logan was released in 2017. It was directed by James Mangold and is a sequel to the 2013 X-Men film The Wolverine, which was also directed by James Mangold. And it's fair to say, after the success of The Wolverine, 20th Century Fox made the decision to just let director James Mangold and Hugh Jackman, who portrays Wolverine, just get on with the film and do the best that they can. And that's probably the best decision 20th Century Fox have ever made as a studio regarding the X-Men franchise. Mangold had a difficult task. He had to create a film which would provide a suitable send-off for Jackman's iteration of Wolverine, and it's fair to say it pays off. Logan is a brilliant comic book film. It's definitely in my top 10. And it's also a great film which highlights that dark comic book films can be just as successful as comedic ones. Logan, or Wolverine as I like to refer to him, is at his most vulnerable in this film. And as I've said previously in other reviews, when you're doing a Wolverine film, you have to make the character vulnerable because he's pretty much indestructible. In this film, it highlights that he is not. He's old, he's frail, he is dying, and the film deals with that very well. You feel incredibly sympathetic for Logan in this film. You actually wish that he dies because he seems to be in so much pain. And it's great that throughout this film you can see him slowly getting weaker and weaker. The last third of this film, he's pretty much in bed until the final battle scene. He's pretty much in bed and constantly dropping in and out of consciousness. And that was a really clever decision because it makes you understand that Logan is not getting any better. There's no miracle cure. He is dying and he knows he is dying. As for the other characters, it was great that they showed a different side to Professor X in this film. He has a degenerative mental condition, which means he's having seizures. And of course, due to his mutant capabilities, his seizures affects miles for when he has them. And honestly, Professor X, especially portrayed by Patrick Stewart, is like the very calm, well-mannered head of the X-Men family. In this film, it really shows he has fallen from grace, and he does. I think it's great what they did with Professor X in this film. And of course, then there's new additions to the cast. Lara, or X-23. She is an amazing character. She doesn't have a lot of dialogue, and yet in this film, you feel you understand her character a lot, and you feel a lot of sympathy for her. Not only can she hold her own in a fight, she's also provides a catalyst for Logan and Professor X to come together and try and protect this new mutant from people who are after her. I think that was a great choice because it means that Professor X shows once again a more caring side, and Logan feels that he has to protect this girl at all costs. So I think that was a very clever decision which brings all three characters together. So in terms of the character development, I'm going to give it a 10 out of 10 because they make all of the characters more vulnerable than they ever have been before. Hugh Jackman gives his best performance to date because he makes Logan so vulnerable in this film, and yet, even though he is vulnerable and dying, he can still kick ass. You know, he can still hold his own in the fight. And the rage sequence in the final battle scene, that is brilliant. I mean, that was put in there for the fans and it works really well. Patrick Stewart, as I said, Professor X is shown very differently in this film, and Stewart does an amazing job. When you consider that this is Patrick Stewart's last film as well, I think because it's Hugh Jackman's last film, that's kind of overlooked, and yet Patrick Stewart's been in the role for 17 years as well, and he's done brilliantly in this. And in this film especially, he's finally has a chance to portray a different side to the character, and he does a great job. Now, Daphne Keane, as I said, doesn't get a lot of dialogue in the role of X-23, and yet She's an amazing actress, definitely one to watch out for in the future because she's just brilliant. She can give a facial expression which is just better than reading a script because you understand exactly what that character is thinking and going through. Now, of course, there are quite a few villains in this film, not exactly memorable villains, but yet they do their job and are quite exciting. Now, Boyd Holbrook portrays pretty much a bounty hunter who's trying to hunt down X-23 and all of these mutant kids who have escaped from the facility so that they can be basically tortured and experimented on. And he's a fantastic villain for the simple reason there's no redeeming qualities whatsoever. You hate this guy. You want to see him dead. And that's a really good thing for a villain. I mean, I'm glad when this guy's dead. You know, I've been waiting for it the entire film. You're just like, for God's sake, please kill this guy off. And that's a testament to the actor for making the villain so unlikable. And of course, Richard Grant, the mastermind villain behind it all, he was just born to play a villain anyway. So he does a really good job in this. So I'm going to give the performances a 10 out of 10 because honestly, they're all very, very strong. I can't really fault any of them. If I had to pick standout ones, it would be Hugh Jackman and Daphne Keane because they were just amazing. I have no complaints for any of the effects in this film. All the CGI still holds up. You'd expect it to. The practical effects are done very well. The action scenes are intense. You're on the edge of your seat throughout those action scenes in this film. And of course, what makes Logan stand out when compared to other X-Men films is that it's rated 15. That means that they can have blood and guts in it. At last, Wolverine has claws that come out of his hands. When he kills people, there is going to be blood and guts. So I think it was great that Fox gave the go-ahead for them to include things like that because it makes this film even more brutal. And that's a really good thing because Logan's a very brutal film and the inclusion of making it realistically with blood means that you can feel that brutality. It makes it realistic. So overall, I'd give the effects a 10 out of 10. No complaints about any of them whatsoever. And the inclusion of blood in this film was a really great touch. This film is very, very depressing. And I mean that in a good way. There's not many uplifting moments. There are a few comedic moments which really work. They're not... the film's not riddled with them though. Like they keep the comedic moments very short and very sweet. And a lot of this film is quite down and dark. For example, there's some very depressing moments in this film. A family of mother, father and son who are introduced and give shelter for Logan, Professor X and X-23 are just brutally murdered because they're in the way of them getting X-23. They didn't have to be killed off, but they were. And the film sets up, you actually get some development for these characters. You understand who they are. You understand their life, how happy they are. And to see them killed off, it hits you hard. Because the film's actually dedicated time for you to get to know these characters. So when they are killed off, it's very, very upsetting. Professor X's death, often overlooked in my opinion, is handled beautifully. You know, there's a great final moment between Professor X and Logan. And when Logan buries him with X-23... it brings Logan and X-23 closer together as a result of that. And of course, probably the most upsetting moment in this film, and I think we all knew that it was coming, is when Logan gets killed off. Now, the final battle scene between Logan and a clone of himself is brilliant. Because the clone is pretty much what Logan seems to think people think he is. Just a mindless killing machine. To see him fight that clone, it feels like he's fighting his inner self. He's trying to show that he is better than that. And of course, he is killed at the end of this film, and that's just handled beautifully. I mean, there was people crying in the cinema because Hugh Jackman had been in the role for so long, and they gave him such a beautiful exit. And the final funeral scene, in which X-23 gets the cross and lays it down into the shape of an X, that was amazing. I honestly don't think that they could have handled Hugh Jackman's departure from the role any differently. I wouldn't have changed a thing. So in terms of the story and writing, I'm going to give it a 10 out of 10 because this film is intense, it has shocking moments, and it handles the departure of Hugh Jackman from the role as Logan beautifully. So for this film's special recognition, I'm going to talk about the dark tone of this film. So of course we had dark comic book films before Logan, no one is denying that. However, Logan is a prime example that you don't need to follow the light-hearted banter of Marvel films in order to make a successful comic book film. Logan was very popular when it was released, and in my regard it's one of the top 10 comic book films ever made. Not only does it handle Hugh Jackman's departure from the role really well, it gives a very intense film which is realistic. You know, the blood shows that this world is brutal. It's not always going to be nice. There's not always time for loads of jokes. Sometimes you can have an emotional thrill ride of a film which has just as much enjoyment as a fun, witty banter Marvel film. And also, on a special note, the Logan Blu-ray has a special Logan Noir, which is basically the same film but in black and white. And honestly, I've seen it and it's really good. Having it in noir is actually a great touch. You know, it's actually really well done. So overall, I'm going to give the special recognition a 10 out of 10 because this film is dark and it's not afraid to show the realities of what would happen in situations like this. So in conclusion, James Mangold knocked the ball out of the park with Logan. It has great characters portrayed by brilliant actors, the standouts being Hugh Jackman and Daphne Keane, and honestly, the dark and realistic tone of this film works wonders. It gives Hugh Jackman a beautiful ending to his 17-year stint as the character of Wolverine, and honestly, a lot of merit should go not only to the director and the cast, but also to 20th Century Fox for greenlighting this film. It's a film which I could never see Disney Marvel actually doing because it's dark. I could not see Disney greenlighting a film like this. So overall, Logan gets a very well-deserved 50 out of 50, which gives it a grade 1 ranking. Honestly, this is an amazing film. I would have to be nitpicking in order to find any criticisms of it. Logan, it's a pure gem. So thanks for watching, guys. I really do hope that you enjoyed my Logan movie review. Please remember to like, comment and subscribe in order to receive great and maybe even improved quality content in the future. And of course, this is my last X-Men review! Hooray! I started doing these reviews in the new year and it's taken about 5 months, but they're finally over and I've loved rewatching these films. They're great. Now, of course, there are 2 reviews, Deadpool 2 and X-Men Dark Phoenix, which I haven't done. Well, I have, but I did them before I started this series of reviews. So they're already up on my YouTube channel, so you can go and watch them if you want. They're there. No worries about it. Now, next week, I will be doing a video analysing the X-Men as a franchise to see the highs and lows of the X-Men films and whether the majority of them are good or bad. So I hope you look forward to that. I'm really looking forward to doing that. And then, of course, I will be moving on to a new film series reviews. I'm not going to give away what films I'm going to be reviewing next, but don't worry. Rest assured, I'm going to do one that I hope the majority of you will enjoy. So, with that being said, I will see you in another one. See ya!